Yeah, just to give some, this is the session that I did at the roadshow. It was on the behaviours of concern best practice approach to the DFG, which is some new guidance that we published at the Children's Summit back in June. One of the things I just want to make really clear is it's not just a guide for occupational therapists. We developed it with occupational therapists, but we also had technical officers, we had HIA managers and other managers. And I know we've got Wayne from Middlesbrough who was involved in the workshop that we held when we were developing the guidance. So it's just making it really clear that this new guidance when working with adults and children with behaviours of concern isn't just for occupational therapists, it's for everyone involved, from technical officers through to caseworkers, obviously occupational therapists and grant officers. The reason that we've developed the guidance is, as many of you will know, about 4 years ago, just before I joined Foundation, my colleague Dave Eldridge published a guide on challenging behaviour, which was really popular. The feedback that we got from that guidance was the need for having a more specific guide so that everybody understands their role in the DFG process. I think what we've also heard from you out there is just those cases where the DFG is perhaps being used as a sticking plaster to the issues, and you put an adaptation in and then 6 months later, you've got another application because the behaviours have moved on and you're having to do other adaptations. So what we hear from you is that lots of times where the DFG is being used as a temporary fix. What we also hear is that actually to be able to understand what is necessary and appropriate, actually understanding how behaviour and people's sensory needs impact on everyday life is really complex, and how do we go about that? Also, for people or families where you've got an adult or a child with behaviours of concern, that need to really support that family through the DFG process, from that initial assessment through to the application process. When we developed these guidelines, we worked with Steve Carnaby, who's a psychologist, and we brought together a range of occupational therapists and, as I mentioned, technical officers, HIA managers to come together. We also had a couple of organisations that represent people with lived experience of behaviours of concern. And one of the things that we heard from them was that need to be really sensitive, not just, as I say, for the assessment process, but for the application and, how the builders work with that family when they're on site installing the adaptation. For the technical officers out there, you'll know actually sometimes knowing what to put in and what to include is really challenging, and just understanding what the range of solutions are for different types of behaviours and sensory need. We heard that message as well, that often it's really it's hard to know what is and isn't going to work. And just that need for, not for all cases, but if for people with more complex needs, if the adaptations are going to be successful, what we also heard was, as I say, not for every DFG application, but certainly for some, that need for good handover, but also ongoing monitoring so that care plans can be adjusted if the behaviour changes. And that just kind of extends the longevity of the adaptations. So certainly where we've got people with behaviours of concern, the DFG process does tend to be more complex than your more simpler solutions, which again drove that need to have guidance that is specific to adults and children with behaviours of concern. I'm just going to run through, just give you the headlines around what is actually in the guidance. You can find, and hopefully somebody will put a link in the chat, but we have got the guidance on the website now for you to have a look at and to look at more detail, or the more detailed version. But I'll just go through the headlines. As I say, we had a multi-professional group that came together for a day a couple of years ago in June to help us develop the guidance. And one of the key things that came across was having some overarching principles around how we work with individuals and their families where behaviour is concerned is a factor. So, to be honest, these principles are already in the DFG guidance that was published in 2022. So there's nothing new here. It is about a person-centred approach, working with that individual, working with that family around what their needs are and trying to accommodate where possible their preferences. I think what's really important with these types of cases is how crucial collaboration is as well, and how that collaboration is needed across from, those that are involved in the assessment, to the technical officers getting involved in the design, to the grant officers and the caseworkers that are going to be supporting that individual through the DFG process. So what is really important is that collaboration, but really keeping the individual and the family at the heart of that collaboration. Again, when we had the workshop, what came through, particularly from the organisation representing those with lived experience, was that we have to recognise we're adapting people's homes, and it's really important that we're not putting in adaptations that is restrictive and creating probably not the best choice of words, but we're not trying to create a prison. We're trying to create adaptations that actually improve people's quality of life and development and welfare. So when we're looking at solutions, we want to provide solutions that enhance quality of life, rather than providing adaptations that really restrict. And again, what came through at the workshop is that everybody who's involved in the DFG, from the occupational therapists through to the technical officers and the contractors and the suppliers, all have an appropriate level of knowledge around behaviours of concern, so that everybody can work effectively with the individual and the families as well. So that's another underpinning principle is that everybody has got that understanding of behaviours of concern, no matter what your role is for in the DFG process. So those are the underlying principles that are at the beginning of the document guidance. We've then separated out the DFG process. So what you'll find in the guidance is quite a detailed section around assessments. And again, we've kind of split the assessment element up. So we've got the objectives. So one of the key things that came across when we were developing the guidance is that you don't take a drill or fix a grab rail until you understand that behaviour. So you understand the purpose of the behaviour. If you don't understand the purpose of the behaviour, then how do you know what you're providing is going to be effective? Now, that's not to say that you don't provide a temporary short-term solution to deal with, that deals with the immediate risk, but that you understand the behaviour, and also that you're identifying actually what is it in the physical environment that is influencing the behaviour. Because actually, if you understand the purpose of the behaviour, actually understand what it is in the environment, it actually might negate the need to actually adapt and find other strategies. Really important, we include quite a detailed section around who's involved. Not that this is a checklist of who you have to be involved, but you need everyone that's going to help provide insight around the purpose of the behaviour. So it's obviously including the child. Family members have lived with the child or the adult for decades and often have a real understanding around what does and doesn't work. So they're crucial in that assessment process. One of the things that came across as well from the Challenging Behaviour Foundation is that the assessment can be almost therapeutic for the family as well, because for the first time, if the assessment is done really well and you involve the family, that they, for the first time, can actually gain a really good understanding of actually what is it about the environment that might be causing the behaviour. Appreciate this next bit is easier said than done in some areas, given the pressure particularly on diagnostic services, but obviously getting those crucial relevant practitioners as well. OT social workers, you may need to get, for the really complex cases, somebody with more behavioural specialist knowledge to help you really understand what's going on and making sure that adaptation. And again, I don't know if we've got any commissioners here this afternoon, but also as commissioners, making sure that you're providing access to those more specialist assessments if they're needed as part of the DFG process. We then talk a little bit about not only the approach to the assessment, but also the approach to the application process as well. So it needs to be structured and systematic, being sensitive to individual needs. It's really important that when you do the assessment, that families, parents don't feel that they're being blamed for the behaviour. So that came through in the workshop, that opportunity for the assessment to inform the family. But it's really important that people don't feel that the family don't feel that they're being blamed for the behaviour. It can take time, the application process. It takes time perhaps to gather the bits of information that they need for the test resources. It might take time for the OT or whoever to gather the information around what is necessary and appropriate. So what's really important for the family is that they have an understanding of what you're going to be doing during the assessment, that the assessment will take time because we want to get it right. If we install the wrong thing, then often we can do more harm than good. But it's really important that we keep the family up to date with if there's going to be delays or if it's going to take time. So really helping the family understand why things are going to take time, because we want to get it right, because we don't want to do any harm by putting in the wrong adaptation. As I say, I've only given you the headlines. As I say, the guidance is much more detailed. So in terms of, for the technical officers, what's really important is really having a good idea from social care, from the occupational therapists, actually, what are we trying to achieve with having the home adapted. So before we even start talking about a design, what you want to understand as a technical officer is actually what difference do we want the DFG to make? What difference do we want any adaptations that are installed to make? Because when you have that knowledge, then you can go away as a technical officer, obviously working with the occupational therapist to find the right solution. What's really important as well is when you're thinking about what you're trying to achieve from the adaptation, working with the family. So are we trying to design something that is going to remove any distressing elements from the environment? Are we trying to help the adult or child regulate their emotions and sensory regulation? Are we trying to design adaptations that facilitate that person's interactions with the family and interactions with everyday activity? Or is it about ensuring safety and security of the child? So really understanding what we're wanting the difference to make, and making sure that obviously what we're recommending fits with the 12 purposes for which we can use a DFG, and that it's necessary and appropriate. And then working with builders and suppliers, anybody who's had an extension done, you technical officers out there, you will know how noisy, dusty, smelly having an adaptation done is. So actually, for these individuals, they're more likely to find that really stressing. So children and adults with behaviours of concern, if there are sensory needs, they will find that noisy, smelly, dusty environment quite distressing. So that importance of working with the contractor, that pre-planning meeting with the family, so the family know when's going to be the noisy bits, perhaps meeting the builders so that the person is familiar with who's going to be on site, and coordinating that with the contractors is something really important, particularly where some of the stuff that's going to be going on, the noise, the dust, might cause distress. And in some cases, it might be necessary to look at respite if it's going to be if it's a major piece of work that's going to be distressing. So that real importance of working with the family, helping them to understand what's going to happen, when's it going to happen, so that they can plan around that to support their family member that we're providing the adaptations for. For you caseworkers out there, you play a pivotal role, because inevitably, particularly with big builds, there are inevitably likely to be delays. So that importance of keeping family up to date. So again, if there are going to be delays, that the family are fully aware of that, if there are any changes. And as caseworkers, you play a pivotal role to support that family during the installation of the adaptation. And then, as I say, with some cases, it's really important to get the handover and review right. So when we're handing over, it's about ensuring that everybody understands why the adaptation is being installed. If it's part of a positive behavioural support plan, that the adaptations are written into the plan, the carers understand how the adaptation will support that person's or will eliminate that behaviour, how to use it. So that need to provide necessary training. As I say, it's very easy for people with behaviours of concern to adapt their behaviour when you install adaptations. So that's where regular reviews just ensure that the adaptations remain effective. And if there is any concern that the behaviour is beginning to adapt, then you can make those minor tweaks so that you're not having to do a major change to the environment. So you can make those adjustments as people's needs change. So hopefully what we want to see the guidance make a difference is that hopefully that the families, the adult and the child with behaviours of concern have an even better experience of the DFG process that you're already providing, but that hopefully they experience an even better. I think we're hoping that for you as practitioners, professionals and services, that you feel confident about what your role is when you're working with individuals with behaviours of concern, and hopefully just clarify some of the roles and responsibilities of different practitioners and different services during the different phases of the DFG process. So as I say, that's a little bit of a I'm not quite sure I'm going to be going through these bits, because I think Paul just asked me to just go through the guidance itself. Is that right, Paul? Yeah. Yeah, and as I say, I've just done a whistle-stop tour. The guidance is on the website. We have got our behaviours of concern community of practice that you're more than welcome to join. I think Paul might be mentioning the networks where we meet regularly, and I also keep people up to date with the stuff that we're doing around behaviours of concern. That's it, Paul. Thank you.